We're going to start today. We're going to learn about, we have in the seder, we have urchatz and rachsa. Right before we eat the matzah, we wash our hands a second time. Rachsa. Urchatz also means to wash. Question is, why is there a vav before? And why are we washing twice? We're going to start with the Torah. Siman Tav Ayin Hey. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out exactly how to relay this information. It's a very long sif, and it seems like the best method will be to split up the sif, to split up this, not the siman, but the first sif in the siman, which is very long, because it essentially is sections. Split it up, and today we'll try to hyper-focus on rachsa and all of the necessary halachas that a person needs to know about it. The Torah says, "V'yitol yadav v'yikach ha'ara." You should wash your hands and take the seder plate. Shamatzis b'soicho keseder shenichem. And you pick up the matzahs as the way that they were placed. And then the Torah will continue and go through the intricate details and halachas of how to go through the next parts of the seder, which is after rachsa, you have motzi matzah, maror korach. Those three simonim of the seder. Because I bet you that most people don't know how to do it properly.
A lot of people have a fancy
So we're gonna learn
seder
about
plates
that.
with something underneath it.
Yeah, okay.
You really don't have the matzah sofa.
Okay. Yeah. So instead of doing everything at once, like we usually do the Torah, the Shulchan Aruch, the Nosi Kalim, we do full things at a time. We're going to break it down by section, and this is the way that I always personally like learning myself also when I'm learning something in depth. So we're just going to focus today on the rachsa, not the matzah. The Beis Yosef says, "Afal pi shenatul yadav betibul rishon." Didn't we already wash our hands during urchatz? Kadesh urchatz. We washed our hands already. So why do we need to wash our hands again? It says in the Gemara in Maseches Pesachim on Kuftes Vav Amud Beis, Choyzer v'notel yadav shniya. Why do you wash your hands a second time? Umevarach al netilas yadiyim, and you see the beracha al netilas yadiyim. Mibnei shehesech daiso b'shas kriyas Haggadah. Because you diverted your mind when you read the Haggadah. You had a diversion of the mind. So the Beis Yosef begins by saying the urchatz that we did earlier on in the seder will not count because it's assumed that our minds were diverted. The Kasav Mordechai, and regarding that, the Mordechai writes, "Nirali she'im niskavim benetilu rishoina ligmor ba kol sudaso." If a person had in mind with the first washing that he did, aka with the urchatz, that rachitza, that washing that he did would count for the entire meal, for the entire Haggadah, the entire night. Below hesech hadas, and he was very careful not to have any sort of diversion of the mind whatsoever. Physical, mental, he made sure that his head was always in there and focused on that netila. On that washing, ein sarach lachzor v'litol shniya. According to the Mordechai, person would not need to wash a second time. Adkan, till there are the words of the Mordechai. V'nirali de'ein lechavim bekach. Says the Beis Yosef, one should not have such an intention. Shol lavatel tokanas chachamim, in order that one will not nullify and cancel the decree of the chachamim. Shesiknu liyitol pamim belel Pesach. The rabbis enacted to wash twice on Pesach night. Let me just throw out a question on this Beis Yosef. What did you say?
No, sorry.
Oh, wow.
No, it was wrong. It was wrong.
Let me ask a question on this Beis Yosef. Rabbi Cairo over here is saying, I don't like the Mordechai, who said that you shouldn't have in mind that the first washing, the urchatz will count for the rachsa, for the later washing, before we eat. The washing that we do right before we have karpa shouldn't count. That's what the Beis Yosef doesn't want you to do. According to the Mordechai, it's fine if you don't divert your mind. Why? The Beis Yosef says not to nullify the decree of the Chachamim. The takana of the Chachamim, the decree that they made that you should wash twice. Question. Where does it say anywhere in Kol HaTorah Kula that the Chachamim, that they established to wash twice on the night of the seder?
Order of the order. It says it right away
It
in the order.
says it in the Simanim? Okay, where's that from?
The Haggadah. The Haggadah is from
Okay.
Chachamim.
Yeah. Who made that? Who decided that?
The Baal
And
Haggadah.
yeah, that's only talking about if you diverted your mind. If
Who
you didn't
says-
divert your mind, who said you need to wash? Where does it say that you need to? Why would you need to if you didn't divert your mind and your hands were clean? Why would you need to?
We say Hesachatas all the time, but not all the time.
Okay, but if you didn't divert your mind, why would you need to?
Bar Priyagofen also goes by the
We're not talking about boy pergaf. I'm talking about washing. If you didn't divert your mind and you didn't touch anything that would require a new washing, who said you need to wash? Where is the Beis Yosef coming from when he says that this is an enactment that they made that you have to wash twice no matter what? Usually people ask me questions. Now I'm asking you questions.
So what's the difference if you have a pickle, right? That's water, vegetable has water on. You have to wash for it, and then you want to eat bread right away. That suffice.
Exactly.
You
Maybe.
Before that.
Yeah, maybe. If you wash kedin with the kli and everything, yeah. I mean, we already discussed that in Kuf Nun Ches. We already discussed that over there. Got the recordings to prove it.
Before I came.
But anyways, so that question on the Beis Yosef, that's already a question to talk about. Let's come back to that idea. Take a look at the Bach. The Bach over here says, he quotes this whole idea, quotes his Gemara, he quotes the Beis Yosef, and then you know what the Bach says? Look at the highlight. Lo yadati lo tam. I have no clue what the Beis Yosef is talking about over here. The kaven the ikra takana mishum dilma naga. Why did they say Rachsa? Wash your hands before the motzi matzah. Wash your hands before korach, before Shulchan Aruch. Why did they say that? You know why they said that? Mishum dilma naga. Maybe you touched something that now would require you to wash your hands. Im kain mamei lehecha debri lei. If that's so, consequently, if you know and it's clear to you, the lo naga, that you didn't touch an area which would require you to now rewash, lo yisarach netilas acheres, you don't need to wash again.
What'd
you say?
No, it's not. No, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's not like before I forget. This Shabbos, I almost always have shalshudas in the in shul, and I wash from shalshudas, and then you have the suda, and then you're benching. My achronim is normal, but then they start marv right away. Why do you have to wash again before you daven marv? If you're having the suda, you have shel shudas, do you have to wash right again?
Good question. Did you hear the question?
For marv.
You wash my makron and beshel shudas, and then you're about to daven marv. Do you need to wash before marv?
Because you just had the suda, you wash your hands before the suda.
If you didn't divert your minds, you probably don't need to. You probably don't need to if it was right before.
It's like if you make it's an asher yotza.
It's like if you came out of the bathroom.
It's my machar.
Right, exactly, same exact idea. And if you just came out of the bathroom, also, and then you're going to daven, this is all the same under the same umbrella. Says the Bach. What on earth is the Beis Yosef talking about? Says the Bach. You know what the takana was? They made an they made an enactment that maybe that you need to wash again because maybe you touched an area that would require you to rewash. But if you know that you didn't touch that area, you don't need to wash again. You don't need to. And then the Bach over here continues over here. And by the way, he's talking about over here what you were just discussing. Also. Right? In other cases, Hesach Hadas. All right. So this is basically everything on the page of the Torah that is Nogeya that applies to Rachsa. We're going to leave this open in case we need to come back to it. We're going to move on to the Shulchan Aruch now, who says, Yito yodav yavarach al netilas yadiyim. Wash and make the beracha al netilas yadiyim. By the way, we should point out, we're even saying that this washing is so important to the extent that you would recite a beracha. So we're really holding that the first washing wasn't good. Now, by urchatz, did we say a beracha? Nope. We didn't say a beracha. There's no taz, but there is a Magen Avraham. That's why we're going to learn the Magen Avraham. This is basically a crash course on Rachsa. The Magen Avraham begins by quoting what we already saw, and the Mordechai, and then he says, "V'li nira shelo yechavin lakach." Says the Magen Avraham, don't ever do what the Mordechai just said to do. Shelo levatel tkachanos chachamim shetiknu lito beis pamim b'layla. By the way, he's quoting the Beis Yosef, just rewording it. That's what the Beis Yosef said. Don't do it. Don't do what the Mordechai said, that you keep your hands clean and you don't divert your mind, and then you don't need to wash again by Rachsa. Says the Magen Avraham, v'lo yadati heichon matzinu takanazo. I have no clue where they found this enactment. The Beis Yosef said, don't do what the Mordechai said, so that you'll wash again. Okay? Okay. Why? Because if you don't wash again, you're going to nullify what the rabbis established to do. Question, where did the rabbis establish this? Where did they say to do this? That was the question that I asked before. This is the Magen Avraham's question. Why do you think it was such a good question? Questions that I ask, I don't just think off of the top of my head. Sometimes I do. But the real good questions are when you learn something in depth and you see the questions that the Gedolim are asking. This is the Magen Avraham's question. This is right? We saw also, what was the language of the Bach over here? The Bach says, I don't know what you're talking about. The Magen Avraham says it even stronger than the Bach. He says, this takana, where do we find such a thing? You have to wash. By Rachsa, you have to wash again. Ta'am Rinan, we say in the Gemara in Psachim on Kuf Tezvav, Amad Beis, not all Yada B'Tibul Rishon. So actually, B'Tibul Rishon, yeah. If you washed on by the first dipping, by Karpas, you got to wash a second time. Because of time, Obesido Doma Asach Daisa. The reason why you got to wash again is because maybe you had a diversion of the mind. In Cain, if that's so, consequently, if you didn't divert your mind, you don't need to wash again. However, you would still need to make a beracha on your first washing in that case. By the way, and then it's talking about, look at what he quotes, Simin Kufyon Chesiv Zayin, that's what I was referring to. All right? That gets discussed over there, Davar Shetibul B'mashka, whatever, that gets more complicated, but this is the idea.
And then what happens if you had tried to make sure you didn't have Hesach Hadas, you made the beracha, and then you messed up, you have to make another beracha.
Yep, that's right.
Is considered
That's right, garnished. Okay, so this is the Magen Avraham, also very anti the Beis Yosef. And this idea of, where do you see anywhere that that this is an enactment to do? Same idea, the Bach, the Beis Yosef, they're all bothered by the same issue. Okay. All right, you have the Eshel Avram over here. All right, we don't need to see anything over there. All right. Any questions on what we did so far? Okay, now we are going to move. I mean, it's relatively simple when you learn it like this, as opposed to learning a boatload of information in Sif Aleph and then trying to come back to everything. It's much more organized, and I think it's better for the brain to process also. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Start with the Mishnah Berurah. I didn't digitally highlight anything yet. In my Mishnah Berurah, believe me, there's a lot of highlights here and notes. on the side. Yitel yadav, wash your hands. Roitza loimer af al gav shenatal yirakus. Even though you already washed for the vegetables, you already washed by karpas. K'moshe kasav simin tafayin gimel sivav, as it says, it's discussed over there. Mikomakom kevin da'amar in Esaim Haggadah v'hal. Nevertheless, since in the interim, in between the urchatz and the Rachsa, you said the Haggadah and Halal. Chayshina and Shema Hissach Da'isov Nagam Makom Betunaf. We're worried that perhaps you had a diversion of the mind and you touched a dirty place. Shahayadayim Oskani Osein, because the hands are considered busy. So it's assumed that already you touched an area that you weren't supposed to touch. It's already assumed. We're giving you we're assuming the worst. And the Mishnah Berurah said, even though you already washed your hands for the yarakos, for the vegetables, that's referring to karpas. The tibu rishon, that's referring to urchatz. Even though you already washed for the yarakos, aka for the karpas, like the Shulchan Aruch writes, nevertheless, since you said the Haggadah in between, we're worried that you had a diversion of your mind, mishmiras yadav, from guarding your hands to make sure that they remained clean. And you touched a makom metunaf, which is a dirty area which would obligate you to wash your hands. So again, what is considered a makom metunaf? That is discussed over there in Siman Daled, so that's why it has to do with this. But basically, any area that is typically covered and you scratch, you have to wash. You would have to rewash. Sheyadayim askani osein. This is a very important line. Your hands are busy. A lot of times, subconsciously, people don't even realize that they're touching certain areas. Right? People, they twiddle their hair, whatever it is that they do. And v'yesh lachshosh shenaga b'makom mechusa begufa. We are concerned that a person touched a covered area in his body. V'lachein hetzrichu oisel liyito yadav shuv v'levarach al netilas enacted kederach shemavar kol hashana koydem shel chapas. There's a concern that maybe he touched a dirty place in his body, and therefore it required him to wash his hands an additional time and make the beracha of al netilas like he does the rest of the year. Okay, for the first washing by urchatz, you don't say a beracha. The answer, in short, why you don't is because it's a davar shetibul mamashka, which we never make a beracha on. It's not for bread. In the footnote over here, they quote everything that we just saw: the Beis Yosef, the Bach, and the Magen Avraham. Thank you, Uz v'Hader, and have a wonderful day. This is a very important ber halacha. The ber halacha quotes a Sheboli Haleket, which is actually very similar to the Mordechai. V'katzu b'Sheboli Haleket. Kevan shetalu hatam behesach hadas. Since we said that the reasoning depends on a diversion of the mind, im baru lo sheshimer yadav. If a person knows that he guarded his hands, hativ, very well, below noga bekisvi hakodesh, and he didn't touch kisvi hakodesh, such as a Megillah, holy writings, because those have the ability to make someone's hands impure. Or b'shar dvarim hamatamim hayadayim, or he knows he didn't touch something else which could make the hands impure. Ein tzarich lachzor v'litel. You don't need to rewash. Shar yadav tahayros netilas rishona, because your hands are already clean from the first washing. Im natal ein lo levarach, and if you would rewash, you don't need to say a beracha shemi a beracha levatala. Maybe the beracha will be in vain. The Sheboli Haleket is taking it a step further. He's saying if you know your hands are clean, you know your hands are clean. They're good since urchatz. Not only do you not need to wash again, like what the Mordechai said, but the Sheboli Haleket is taking it a step further. If you did wash your hands, you wouldn't say another beracha again. Why? It would be a beracha in vain. Beracha levatal. It's taking it a step further. He calls it a beracha levatal. Beracha in vain. Question. Why didn't the Beis Yosef quote the Sheboli Haleket?
You come before.
Yes, it's not.
Yeah, the Beis Yosef is after Sheboli Haleket to Rishon.
Dann ist ready.
Beis Yosef quotes the Mordechai.
Wenn er gelungen, Bogus.
Why didn't he quote the Sheboli Haleket?
You have access to it?
He quotes it in other places. When we learned Hallel, we learned that he quoted the Sheboli Haleket. I think Hilchos Hallel in Hanukkah, if I'm not mistaken. I remember that Sheboli Haleket there. Very nice. I think it was there. Yeah, a few reasons why we say Hallel or something. Oh, the beracha acknowledges. Similar to this, the Magen Avraham quoted by the Mordechai. The Beis Yosef quoted the Mordechai. Okay. Why does the beracha say Magen Avraham? Okay. The after Ladina Lididon bevadei sarach lachshav lito yadav. And even though that we hold that you certainly need to rewash again, as we learned in Siman Kufna and Ches, but prakish lo kivim mitachila lachila. And especially if you didn't have the intention originally when you ate, you didn't have the intention that you were going to rely on this washing for urchatz for eating the actual meal, the suda. Kopanim ein lo lavarach. Wow. The beracha says you should not make a beracha on such a washing. If you know that your hands remain clean from urchatz, when you wash again by Rachsa, says the beracha, don't make a beracha on the Rachsa. If that's not a halachic chiddush, then I don't know what is. That is a tremendous insight. But then you know what the beracha says? And this is why I wanted to spend a full session on this, so that everyone understands clearly where the halacha is coming from. The hanachon sheba'oifen ze yitame yadam koidim anatilo kadesh yuchol levarach. That's the line right there. It's correct that in this specific situation, in this scenario, you should make your hands impure before you wash, in order that you'll need to say a beracha. This is incredibly relevant. The poskim, they talk about this in Siman Kuf Samach Hey Kuf Samach Vav, one of those simanim. If a person went to the bathroom right before he ate, and he washed his hands, and now he wants to wash for hamotzi, he just washed his hands. Could he wash and say a bracha? Big shaila. Comes the ber halacha all the way smack in the middle of the halachas of the seder and Hilchos Pesach, and says, make your hands impure, make them tameh, and then you'll be able to rewash with the bracha. That's what he says you could do over here. If you didn't have hesach hadas and you were shomer yadav, you made sure that your hands remain clean from urchatz. Comes along now Rachsa, says the ber halacha, you lost the bracha. You're not allowed to say the bracha now because your hands are clean. Says the ber halacha, make your hands not clean anymore. Scratch an area on your head that would require you to wash, and then you could say the bracha. That's a fundamental ber halacha.
Is there a nafkamina between how much of your hand you have to wash for tibula b'mashka as opposed to netilas yadiyim?
Yeah, it's a good question. Really,
That's
same thing.
One of the eitzes they give by the bathroom.
Yeah,
By the
just a
bathroom,
little
you
bit.
wash
Shlach
your
wash.
knuckle.
You could do that also, yeah.
Besides touching them.
Okay, so the Oz V'Hadar Mishnah Brura, they give a little intro to this. We don't need the intro because we already learned this very well. And then they continue over here. We only have a few more minutes, and I want to cover one more thing after this. So let's just let's come back to this quickly if we have time, because I want to make sure that this is covered. The Piskei Teshuvos, he says that the custom is to get your hands washed by someone else. All right? I want to say something very important. Women are obligated to wash their hands for urchatz and rachsa, and they have an equal obligation as men. This custom that someone else brings you the water, you bring someone else the water, they bring you the water. It has nothing to do with the gender. Right? It's a misconception out there by some people. There's a custom, other people bring the water, could be anyone. Right? There's a custom also, you don't pour your own cup. Other people pour your cup. There's all sorts of minhagim, right? Because that is the way of freedom. He says you should educate the children to do this as well. All right.
Wait, you mean
The
wait?
next paragraph.
You can pour. You get the kli for a woman. You saying what are you saying?
Yeah, the women don't need to bring you the water. The kids could bring you the water. You could bring it to them. It doesn't need to be that way.
But you can't. We're saying about pouring.
It's a custom.
Using
We're not talking
kli
about
for
pouring. We're talking about bringing a
okay.
washing cup with the basin to put it in, right?
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
you could go to the sink also. It's a custom. You have it brought to you. It's more of a freedom. It's more relaxing, whatever.
Yeah.
All right? He paskins the same thing, what the beracha said. If your hands, you made sure that they were clean, and they were clean from urchatz, scratch your hair. Same exact thing. There's not one chiddush here. Okay? That's how you learn up Rachsa properly. There's not that much on Rachsa. There really isn't, but these are the points to know about keeping your hands clean or not. And this is what you got to know about Rachsa over here. All right? They point out over here, knows Haggadah, I see we only have another minute and a half or so. Say over here that the Chachamim decreed if you touch Kisvei Kodesh that it's going to make your hands tummy. Take a look at the Gemara in Shabbos, Yodalim and Aleph for more reasons. What is considered a Makom Matunav? David's question. An area which is typically covered on your body, which sees Simon Dallard for more details on that.
What
Right?
about like right here? Like you cover your. This is like
That's how
partially
considered covered, above the elbow. I know you want to ask every single inch of your body what's considered covered or not. That's why I keep referencing you to Simon Dallard. Can't teach you a whole Simon in
we
one
say
shot off the top of my head.
so.
Okay, hold on. We only have another minute, so let me finish this. Thank you. So you have an idea over here is that you would not make a new bracha. It would be a bracha l'vatala if they were clean. What does he say over here at the end? It's correct that in this situation where you didn't have hesach hadas, you should make it tameh, right? In order that you can make a bracha according to all opinions, and before the suda and eating the matzah. Oh, they have a long thing over here. Less than 1 minute. We're about to get Buddha. We ran out of time. Some argue on this and say, no. If your hands are clean, why do you need to make them impure again? No, over here is different. Because some say you need to wash again anyways. Right? It's one of the samanim, like you said. And therefore, that's a reason why maybe you would do it. There's a lot of discussion on this, but this is the basic halacha that we come out with. This is the basic halacha that if you made sure that your hands were clean, then you should rewash them. Questions?
No, any question.
All right. Tomorrow we're going to go into